always am shooting for the edit, which means the action's always coming into frame and always leaving frame. And as soon as I see those motions in each one of the shots that I'm taking, I know that I have my edit points. And at that point, I can move on to the next shot. And I do that regardless of if it's a wide shot or a tight shot or any kind of shot. I'm always looking to the motion, because the motion is what I'm going to edit onto.
Now, how do you get that coming into frame, going out of frame shot captured? What do you have to do physically to make that happen?
Well, I have to move into position to where the action is going to be. Essentially, is an anticipation of where the action's happening. Daryl Barton talks about shooting where you ain't, I think is how he puts it.
Yeah.
Essentially, beating the subject to the spot, wherever they're going, being in front of them. The action should be coming toward you rather than you following the action as a photographer. So that requires a lot of listening, and it requires a lot of study of people's behavior and understanding what motivates your subject, and being able to apply that by saying, okay, well, that person's going to be there, this person's going to do this next, they're going to have that interaction with this other person, so I have to put myself physically in position to capture that on tape.
It requires a lot of hustle, I would imagine.
Sometimes. Sometimes. Well, like in the presentation today, I showed the raw tape of the girl coming up on the Iditarod Trail, and she was coming up onto the final stretch, the home stretch of the race, and she stopped. Normally the mushers run in, they run their dogs all the way into the finish line, but she stopped about 5 blocks short of the finish line and gave me a chance to keep up with her, because normally you wouldn't be able to keep up with her. So I ran down the street to meet her coming in, and then walked back with her.
Come on, girls.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're not there yet.
This is quite the entrance.
You think?
So in order to get people or images coming into frame, you're positioning yourself ahead.
Ahead.
And what about going out of frame? What does that require?
Going out of frame is really simple. I mean, it's just a matter of letting them go. Just a matter of not following them.
And being steady. I mean, you have to stay still and let them go.
Right. Right.
I think a lot of young photojournalists whose work I see have a tendency to just, they follow everything. They're
Right.
The camera's constantly moving.
Well, and that makes sense to me if you think about like still photographers. What I understand about still photography and how still photographers work, like sports is a good example. They're always tracking whatever the action is, and it's not a concept necessarily that they understand, letting something go out of frame, because they always want the subject in frame, because that's where they're making their pictures. So it's a difference. It's just a different way of thinking. Still photographers, instead of portraying reality, they're almost capturing an illustration of reality, because in reality, when you talk to people, they're moving around. They're not frozen in time like a still picture.
And it may seem obvious, and I'm sure it's obvious to you, but why is it so important to have the subject come into frame and leave frame for the editing process?
Well, in motion picture visual storytelling, we are trying to create continuity, and jump cuts break continuity. And a jump cut is essentially seeing a person in one spot in one shot, and then in the next shot seeing them in a different spot. And that's just it's physically not possible for that to happen in reality. So the idea being, if they leave frame, that shot is over. They've exited whatever scene they are in, and now you are free to see them in any other position. And you can achieve that mostly by letting them leave the shot that you have currently, or you can use what's called a cutaway. And cutaways you can use, but I don't really like cutaways because it's kind of a crutch, I think.
Yeah. And I guess I was going to ask you why not use a cutaway, because that's the usual way to cover what would be a jump cut, is to just go to something
Well,
else.
because even a cutaway in a way is not, it's not true. I mean, it's not really visually, it's not true. If I don't know.
Well, we're sitting here talking,
Okay.
and I want to butt two sections of this conversation together. What should I shoot?
So you should take the camera and set it on the end of the table and have a wide shot of us,
Okay.
like a 2-shot of
Right.
us.
But that's a cutaway, essentially.
Yeah, essentially,
But although that too would be a cutaway.
it would be.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
not a very good one.
I wouldn't think so. I don't know what you're shooting.
Your phone in your hand.
Okay.
I mean, the traditional cutaway of I don't know what to do, so I'm
Sure.
going to shoot somebody's hand.
Sure.
Not
Yeah.
very helpful, right? I mean, because there's no reason for me. If
Right.
you were talking about your cell phone, then if I shot your cell phone, this
Yeah,
would
that
make
would make
sense,
sense.
right?
But in the context of our conversation right now, a more appropriate cutaway would be a wide shot of us in this room with the table and you talking to me.
Hmm.
Or a shot of this, like there. That would be a cutaway too.
Gotcha. Okay, very good.